My junior year, everything seemed normal. Classes, friends, the usual. But there was one day that changed everything. It was late fall, and I had to stay behind after school to finish a project. Room 304 was assigned to me, a quiet classroom at the far end of the building, isolated. At first, it was peaceful. I liked the silence. It helped me focus. But as the evening wore on, I began to notice how strange it felt. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest, making it hard to breathe. I told myself it was nothing, but then I felt it. The temperature dropped. It wasn't just a slight chill. It was like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath fogged up in front of me and I shivered, glancing at the windows. They were shut. No drafts, just cold. I tried to focus on my work, but that's when I heard the noise. A light tapping, faint but distinct. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe a tree branch tapping against the window. But the windows were clear. Then, the tapping grew louder, sharper, like fingernails rapping against a hard surface. It was coming from behind me, from the chalkboard. I froze in place, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Slowly, I turned around, half expecting to see a student playing a prank. But the room was empty. The chalkboard was clean. The tapping stopped. I let out a nervous laugh, telling myself it was my imagination. But then, the lights flickered. I remember it vividly. The fluorescent bulbs overhead buzzed loudly, flickering in and out, casting weird, dancing shadows across the room. My heart started racing, and I felt that familiar primal fear creeping in. I stood up, thinking I'd had enough, ready to leave. But as I reached for the door, it slammed shut with such force that I jumped. I grabbed the handle and pulled, but it wouldn't move. It was like someone was holding it from the other side. I yanked harder, panic starting to rise in my chest. That's when I heard the whisper, a voice so soft it was barely audible. "Get out!" I whipped around. My breath caught in my throat, but the room was still empty. Except now, something was wrong with the chalkboard. There, scrawled in thick white chalk, were the words, "Get out now." I stepped back, my legs trembling, my pulse pounding in my ears. My hands fumbled for the door handle again, but it still wouldn't open. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Leave, or you'll regret it." I felt something cold brush past me, and I nearly screamed. Desperation kicked in. I banged on the door, shouting for help, but no one answered. Then, suddenly, the door gave way, and I stumbled out into the hallway, breathing heavily. I looked back into the room, and just before the door closed, I swear I saw it. A shadow. Something standing by the chalkboard, watching me. I ran, not stopping until I was outside, gasping for air in the cool night. The next day, I told my teacher about what happened, but instead of laughing it off, she looked at me with wide eyes. "Room 304?" she asked. "No one's used that room in years. It's been closed since the accident. Apparently, years ago, a student died in that room. No one knows how, but ever since, strange things have been reported. Tapping, whispers, shadows. The school never talks about it. But after that night, I knew the stories were real. And now, I avoid that part of the building entirely." Our school library wasn't just old, it was ancient. You could feel the history in the worn wood floors and the dusty, creaking shelves that stretched up to the high ceilings. Most students only went there when they had to. The place had a reputation. They said a student disappeared there years ago, late one night, and their body was never found. I didn't believe in those kinds of stories, not until I found myself alone there, one stormy evening. It was close to 9 p.m., and the storm outside was getting worse. The thunder rumbled, shaking the windows, and the rain battered against the glass. The librarian had left early, and I was the only one still there. At first, I didn't mind. I liked the solitude. But as the minutes ticked by, the atmosphere shifted, the kind of stillness that makes the air thick with tension. I kept glancing up from my work, my eyes darting toward the aisles of books. Then the lights started flickering. At first, it was just a quick flicker, like the storm was messing with the power. But soon, it became more erratic. The lights above me buzzed loudly, and the shadows they cast grew longer and darker. I shook it off, focusing back on my assignment. But that's when I heard it. A soft shuffle, like someone moving between the shelves. I looked up, my heart thudding. The library was empty, at least it should have been. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the vast room. No response. But the shuffling continued, soft and deliberate, coming from the far corner. I told myself it was just the wind, maybe a draft making the books shift. But the footsteps grew louder, closer, until it sounded like they were right behind me. I spun around in my chair, but there was no one there, just rows of dusty books and the flickering lights overhead. I stood up, the unease gnawing at me. That's when the lights cut out completely, plunging the library into darkness. My heart raced as I pulled out my phone, its weak screen the only source of light. I shone it around, but it barely penetrated the thick shadows. Then, between the rows of shelves, I saw it. A figure. At first, I thought it was a person, but there was something off about it. The way it stood, motionless, like it was waiting. My heart hammered in my chest. "Who's there?" I whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. The figure didn't move. My phone flickered, and for a moment the light went out. When it came back on, the figure was gone. My hands were shaking as I backed away, my eyes darting around the library. I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Then, from behind me, a voice, soft, almost pleading. "Don't leave me." I froze, the breath catching in my throat. Slowly I turned, but no one was there. Just empty chairs and endless shelves. The voice came again, this time closer. "Please, don't leave me." I ran. I didn't care about my assignment, didn't care about anything except getting out. I sprinted toward the exit, my phone shaking in my hand. When I reached the doors, I slammed them shut behind me, breathing heavily. But even then, outside in the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next day, I told one of my friends about what happened, and they went pale. "You didn't stay late, did you?" they asked. That's when they told me about the student who had gone missing years ago. They had been seen in the library late one night just before they vanished, and the only thing anyone ever heard was a voice, whispering, "Don't leave me." I never stayed late in the library after that, and sometimes when I walk past it, I swear I see something, standing between the shelves, watching, waiting. There was a hallway in my school that no one liked to use. It wasn't officially off limits, but everyone avoided it. You could feel something was wrong as soon as you stepped into it. The lights never seemed to work properly, and the air was always cold, even in the middle of summer. People said the hallway was cursed, but no one really talked about why. I didn't believe in curses, at least not until I had no choice but to walk down that hallway. It was late after school, and I was rushing to meet a friend on the other side of the building. The quickest route was through the cursed hallway. I hesitated for a moment, remembering all the stories I'd heard, but I didn't have time to take the long way around. So I pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. Immediately, I regretted it. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating, and the flickering lights cast weird shadows along the walls. My footsteps echoed loudly, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I quickened my pace, telling myself I was just being paranoid. Halfway through, the temperature dropped even further. My breath fogged in front of me, and I shivered. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the whisper became clearer, more distinct. Someone was saying my name. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called out, but no one answered. The whispering continued, this time closer, like it was right behind me. I spun around expecting to see someone, but the hallway was empty. I told myself to keep moving, that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But as I started walking again, the whispering grew louder. I broke into a run, panic overtaking me. But no matter how fast I ran, the whisper followed, growing more urgent, more desperate. Then, the lights went out completely, plunging the hallway into darkness. I stopped, my chest heaving, my eyes straining to see anything in the pitch black. That's when I felt it. A hand, cold and clammy, brush against my arm. I screamed, jerking away, but there was no one there. I ran as fast as I could, my feet slamming against the floor. The whispering turned into a low, guttural growl, echoing in the dark. I could hear footsteps now, heavy and deliberate, following me, getting closer. Just as I thought I couldn't run any faster, the door at the end of the hallway appeared in front of me. I threw myself at it, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the handle. Finally, it gave way, and I tumbled out into the light, gasping for air. I never went through that hallway again. I don't care how late I am or how much of a shortcut it is, because I know something is in there, waiting, watching. And if you're not careful, it might just follow you out.